Hey guys, in this video we're going to teach you guys the application sequence that you will utilize when you're applying for credit cards. So the number one goal of the game, guys, is to get as many sign-up bonuses as you possibly can. An issue when it comes down to doing that is that a lot of the banks are sensitive to how many cards you've already opened. And so once you open a few cards, it becomes harder to open subsequent credit cards in the future. So what we want to do is we want to strategically plan out how we open these credit cards to maximize not only the number of credit cards we get, but also the number of bonuses we can get to make money and profit. I actually have an application sequence. It's a strategy that I utilize with all my students. It's something I teach in my 50K package. And essentially what we do is we go after over 10 banks and we get 20 to 30 credit cards approved if the application criteria is correct on the applicant side. So some things we need to pay attention to when doing this. The process is very data point based. So what I mean by that is the credit bureaus. For instance, let's say I apply to Citibank. If I live in Texas, Citibank might pull my TransUnion credit report, but if I live in New York, they might pull my Experian credit report. So it's very important to research online based on where you live in what state, what credit bureau is being pulled by which banks. And once you figure that out, what you can actually do is you will apply to these banks in an order where you stagger those hard pulls. So you really want to stagger the hard pulls across the banks and the credit bureaus. Essentially, you don't want the banks to realize, okay, Sean has already opened 10 cards today. You want to make it to where maybe you open 3 cards that hit Experian, maybe you open 3 cards that hit TransUnion, maybe you open 4 cards that hit Equifax. And even though you're applying for your 11th credit card, none of those banks realize, like, man, they only see that he's only opened 3 cards today or only 4 cards today. You have a much higher chance of approval. So that's what we're going to do, guys. It's going to be a data point based process, and we're just going to stagger those hard pulls. And so some criteria that you need to meet before you go through this process, it's really important for you to have a high 700s credit score. If you have a lower credit score, the chances of approval just become lower. I've had students with a low 700, high 600 go through the process, maybe get 5 cards. And then I've had students with an 800 plus credit score get about 20 of them. So it's just really important for you to get as high of a credit score as possible before you go through the process. And then another factor is just the age. So ideally you need to have 6 years plus of credit history when it comes to the average age of accounts before going through an app sequence if you want to maximize how many cards you can get. A method to do that very cheaply or even for free is to get your friends to add you as an authorized user on their accounts that might be 10 years old or 20 years old to get that age of the credit high. If your age of credit is only 2 years, 4 years, whatever, it's still fine. You just won't get it approved for as many cards, but it's still worth it to go through the sequence just to maximize how many cards you can get. So this is actually the breakdown for my sequence that I give students. So it's based on priority of how restrictive the banks are. So the more sensitive the bank is, the higher priority we put on them. And so those banks will do first. The banks that are more lenient and don't care about hard pulls will do them lower on the application sequence because we're more likely to get approved for them anyways because they don't care how many hard pulls they see. So the first bank I like to go after is Chase. Chase is by far the most restrictive bank right now. They have the 524 rule, which basically means that you can only open 5 credit cards within the last 24 months. If you have 5 credit cards or more, they will not approve you for a credit card. So you want to prioritize Chase when you're first doing the application sequence. And so what I like to do is I like to go after the business cards first. And the reason is because when you open a Chase business card, all business cards from Chase do not show up on your credit report. So I could go open 5 Chase business cards over the period of let's say 2-3 months. None of them will show on my credit report. It'll still say I have 0 credit cards opened. So what I like to do with Chase is I go after the business cards. Maybe we'll apply for the Chase Inc. Maybe we'll apply for another Chase business card, maybe the Chase Marriott business card. And then I like to go after those personal cards because then the business cards don't count towards the 524 rule. So what I like to do is I like to go after Chase first of all, and then I do the business cards first and the personal. From my experience, I'll give you an example of one file from Texas. They've been pulling TransUnion and Equifax for these Chase cards. The business has been usually Equifax. I think the personal varies off either one. So after doing Chase, guys, the next card I'll go after is going to be with Barclays. If you have a high credit score, high 700s, which hopefully you do, I would prefer the Barclays Arrival Plus. It has a 70,000 point bonus. It's about $700 bonus once you do the MS and you cash out the points. They pull TransUnion. Something you don't know about Barclays is that you need to have less than 5 hard pulls in the last 6 months to get approved. So, they're a very stingy bank, so that's why we have them number 2. If we had them any lower in the sequence, you would probably get declined because they want to see less than 5 hard pulls. In the past, it used to be that if you applied for a bunch of cards in a day, you would get approved for all of them because the bureaus did not update in real time. But as it stands now, they update, right a second after you apply. So it's really important to stagger these applications to where the credit card companies do not see like all the other hard pulls. So after Barclays, the one I like to go after next is going to be Capital One. The reason we have Capital One so high is because Capital One pulls all 3 credit bureaus. They pull TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So we have to prioritize them because let's say we have a lot of hard pulls on any one of those bureaus, then Capital One will be likely to decline us. So we just have to put them very high in the priority list. Capital One will only give you 1 card every 6 months or a credit line increase every 6 months. So it's very important, like let's say you already have a Capital One card. If you've applied for a credit limit increase in the last 6 months, you won't be able to get approved for the credit card now. So it's just very important to keep those rules in mind as you are churning and opening more cards, and especially as you're doing the application sequences. So with Capital One, I like to prioritize the Capital One Venture card. I've had a lot of experience with getting big limits for that card. The Saver card is also very good. I like to stay away from the Spark business card just because they give low limits. Unless you have a business with a lot of revenue and you have some trade lines on there, I would try to stay away from the Spark business card and just go for the Venture. That does have like a 40,000 point bonus, which is about $400. Then what I like to do is I like to move on to Citibank. The rules with Citibank are they only allow you to open 1 card every 9 days or 2 cards every 65 days. Because you're likely doing this application sequence, you want to maximize how many cards you open in a day. You won't be able to get 2 of them. You'll just be able to get 1. What I like to do with Citi is I prefer getting the Citi Prestige. It is a premium credit card. It has a $450 annual fee, but it's just very good for MS. It gives you 5x on travel and also dining, and there's a lot of good MS opportunities with that. It also gives you an airfare credit, I think about $300 every year. You can literally just book a ticket and cancel, and you get the $300 back, and that definitely subsidizes the annual fee. If you don't want to apply for a premium MS credit card, another credit card I would suggest from them is going to be probably one of the American Airlines credit cards that gives you a pretty solid American Airline miles bonus worth at least like $500. So there is a caveat with Citibank. So while they only allow you to get 1 card every 9 days, if you get approved for the personal card, you can go ahead and apply for the American Airlines business card second, and the business card is an exception. So only if you get approved for the first card with Citi, you can go ahead and apply for another card the same day. So you'd apply for the American Airlines business card, and then likely you'll get approved, or it might go pending, whatever the case, but only apply for that card if you get approved for the first one with Citi, and that's an exception to this rule. The next card I like to apply for is with Wells Fargo. I either go after the Propel card, which has like a solid like 30,000 point bonus, about $300, or I like to go after the Wells Fargo Signature Visa. That card gives you 5x back at grocery stores, up to I think about $12,500 in spend. So it's about a $675 bonus. So if you're able to MS at grocery stores, definitely go after that signature card. If you are not, then I would go after the Propel. With Wells Fargo, it's really important. You do need to have a relationship with them. So you need to open a checking account. If you don't have a checking account before applying for the credit card, they will outright deny you. So just make sure you have that checking account in place. And just notice how we're like staggering these. With all of these, we're paying attention to what bureaus were used. And this is like the exact application sequence I use with my students. You guys can copy it. It may or may not work based on the states you are in. You might have to modify it a little bit. Maybe you have to put Fidelity a little bit higher. Maybe you have to put Citi lower. But whatever the case, this is a pretty rough structure that works for most people. And if you want to get the most bang for your buck with as little effort as possible, I would just go ahead and follow this to the T. The next card you're going to go after is the Fidelity Rewards Visa. It has a $100 bonus, not that great, but it's a 2% card, and they give very big limits if you open a brokerage account and you put a certain dollar amount in there. From as far as I can tell, the underwriters do see how much money you have in the brokerage, but they don't see the exact dollar amount. So if I put $11,000 in there, it shows up as the same as having $99,000 in there. Or if I put $1,000 in there, it shows the same as having $9,000 in there. So I had people throw in 11 grand and they've gotten 40K limits from them. And I've had people throw in 50K and still get 40K limits. So with Fidelity, if you can throw some money in the brokerage account, you will be able to get some big limits with them. And so That's pretty crucial. Just having bigger limits always lets you MS more and gives you some dry capital to use in a lot of different things. The next card you'll go after, I like going after the Elevate card from US Bank. It's a pretty good MS card. It gives you 4.5% back if you're using Apple Pay to MS. So basically what that means is if you're using this US Bank Elevate card at a retailer with Apple Pay, you'll get 4.5% back. I think normally the card gives you about 2%, but in order to get the US Bank credit cards in general, you'll have to freeze a couple of these smaller credit reporting agencies. So these credit reporting agencies, what they do is they sell info to the bureaus, and it's just very hard to get approved for US Bank cards if you have like a lot of these reports active. So you want to freeze IDA, you want to freeze ARS, you want to freeze Innovis. It's free to do this. You can look it up. Google how to freeze IDA, how to freeze ARS, or just Google how to apply for US Bank credit cards. It'll come up. And once you freeze those guys, you can go after this. So if you are like, planning on doing an application sequence, this is something you have to think about. It has to be premeditated. So maybe a month before you even do it, you would go ahead and freeze these bureaus. Maybe you'd open the Wells Fargo checking account. Maybe you'd open the brokerage account with Fidelity. Maybe you get all these ducks in a row before you actually go through the process. See, I wasn't lying, guys. We go after like, at least 20 cards. So after the US Bank card, we're going to go after Bank of America. Their rules are you can only open one card every 30 days, whether that's business or personal. I like to go after a personal card first. If it is approved, only then do I apply for the business card. There's no point in applying for the business card if you already got declined for the personal one, because they're likely going to deny you for the second one too. If it goes pending, there are some methods where you can call reconsideration. We'll talk about those in another video, where you can try to get that application approved. Once it is approved, then go after the second card. Sometimes Bank of America does care if you have checking accounts with them, so it's important to have a history. So if you are going to MS, if you already do have some money moving around, let's try. It'd be a good idea to put some money into the checking accounts at Bank of America in a personal and business account. It'll just increase the chances of approval with some of these credit cards. After Bank of America, I like to go after Alliant. So you do need an Alliant membership in order to apply for their credit cards. It's going to ask you a lot of questions. Do you live in Illinois? Do you do this? Do you do that? Just hit other on all of those and just go ahead and donate $20 to deaf children. They have a little foundation. If you donate money there, you can become a member. Once you become a member, you're going to apply for the 3% credit card from Alliant. It's a great credit card, gives you pretty good rewards. The last and probably the one that everyone wants is American Express. With them, the rules are you can get 2 credit cards in a day, and you can get 1 charge card of every unique type. So what that means is, let's say you open a Schwab Platinum. Because Schwab Platinum is a personal platinum card, you can't go ahead and open a platinum card now. So it has to be like each unique product. So I'll give you guys an example sequence. You do need to have a very high credit score in order to get all these cards. So I've had some students that have gotten all 9 of these cards in a day. I've had some students that only got 3 or 4 of them. I think some of it does depend on Amex's internal algorithm, whether they'll approve you for all those cards. You might even get financial reviewed, but I like to go after, let's say we'll go after the Hilton card on the personal side. For a business credit card, we might go after the Simply Cash. And then for all the unique Amex cards, you get the Amex Personal Platinum, the Amex Business Platinum, Amex Personal Gold, the Amex Business Gold, the Plum card, and then the Green Business and the Green Personal. So that's basically the application sequence for Amex. And then after Amex, guys, if you do want to go after some small credit unions or BBVA Compass, Discover, NFCU, PenFed Credit Union, or PNC, you can always add those on there. At this point, you might have too many hard pulls to really get approved for those, but this is where it's really important to go after like some type of credit repair service where you can get all your inquiries wiped. And the funny thing is you could just go do this whole sequence again with some other banks. And I'll leave that up to you guys. You can go further down the line where you have cards with 50 different banks. You do have to play the game where you get the inquiries removed over and over again. But that's something I'll leave up to you guys to research. That wraps up at least about 30 credit cards. So if you go into the sequence, guys, if you pay attention to data points, you stagger those hard pulls, and you go into this with a premeditated, thought-out plan. And honestly, if you just follow this to a T, because this is exactly the application sequence I give my students, and you do come in there with the right credit score, having the right history, you'll easily get approved for 20 plus cards, and then you'll make $10K plus in bonuses. So that wraps up the app sequence video. If you guys have any questions, DM me on Instagram at Sean Sharma.